So that's a fun little parable, huh? Weeping, gnashing of teeth, outer darkness. I love that stuff. You know, I used to ask my friend Jack Christian, I said, Jack, where are you going? And he said, well, I'm probably going to hell. He said, if I have to spend eternity with people, at least I want to be with friends and family. Anyway, it's a difficult parable. And, you know, we're talking now about the 25th chapter. Things are coming to a close in Matthew. Things are coming to a close also for us in our liturgical year. Next week happens to be the last day of the liturgical year. Of course, we will be celebrating the feast of Christus Rex, Christ the King, the reign of Christ. But this is the fourth of a series of parables that Matthew has offered about the second coming. And it's kind of difficult for us to grasp the second coming as a reality, but it's hard to understand these particular parables without that background. And things apparently had been so bad for so long that the expectation for the return of the Messiah, the desire for a Davidic king that would once again establish Israel, not only as a spiritual but a military vortex on the planet, those expectations ran very high. And you can't discount the fact that as Christians, a part of what we know to be true and understand is that there will be a second coming. He will come again. I imagine for you, and I know for me, many times, the hardest line that I have to recite in the creed is that he will come again to judge the living and the dead. It's in our liturgy, it's in our creed, and it certainly is woven deeply and deeply into the gospel and the gospels that are given to us in the form of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All give voice to the expectation that Jesus would come again. And of course, that the expectation was high doesn't mean that it went away. And one of the things that happened by the time Matthew's gospel started coming together, which was maybe 30, 40, 50 years, something like that, after the resurrection, was that he hadn't come back. And eyewitnesses were beginning to die. And they would say things like, well, Joe said that Jesus said that he was coming back. But we don't know if Joe was really telling the truth, and we don't really know what Jesus meant by that. And so Matthew is having to confront a real problem in his community. You know, when will the second coming happen, and what will it look like, and how might we best prepare? And this is one of the stories that Matthew tells that Jesus told about the second coming. And so it begins. A man went on a journey. Now, this is a typical gospel story. A man goes on a journey and entrusts his property, some of his property, into the care of others. This happens today. You know, there's a lot of owners of huge companies that have CEOs and CFOs and boards and so forth, and they run things while the owners are out, you know, just kind of living large, journeying and experiencing other places and other experiences. So anyway, this master, he's going away, and he entrusts a certain of his slaves, people that work for him, with these talents. And, you know, right away, you got to understand now, a talent is not the ability to play music or speak languages, or a talent in the way that we understand talents today. A talent was a weight, it was a measure, and it was a measure primarily of a fine metal, perhaps silver. Of course, the most extravagant would be gold. But it was a significant weight. They're thinking, scholars guess somewhere, for us would be around 60 or 70 pounds. But they equate the measure of a talent with 15 to 20 years' wages of an ordinary working person. Just to put that in perspective, if somebody in our climate, our economy, is pulling down somewhere around $50,000 annually, this would be the equivalent, a talent would be the equivalent of $1 million. A lot of money, a lot of money. Now, here's one thing I know. That if you want to get somebody's attention, all you really have to do is talk about a lot of money. And when Jesus says something like, to one of the slaves, he gave 5 talents, people would go, whoa. I mean, the equivalent maybe of winning the lottery, I don't know, but it's an outrageous amount of money. More money certainly than anyone would have ever seen over the course of a lifetime. And to one he gives 5 talents, to another he gives 3, and to a third, of course, he gives 1. Now, the master, that's Jesus, and he gives away talents, and they're heavy. And what is the talent? Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. What is the talent that Jesus gave away? What is the weightiest thing that Jesus gave to the church and to the disciples? Love. Love. I've poured it out as generously as I possibly can. I've given some to some, some to some, some to some, but everybody's gotten a whole bunch of it. You have more than you'll ever need, trust me. And then he goes away. And now the expectation while the master is away that, he's given them based on ability. We're all different. We're all, kind of all over the map. But, the master knows and probably loves us and knows exactly what to give us, just exactly what we need and according to our abilities. I like that. I like the relationship that it assumes between the master and the slave. And so what do we know about the master right off the bat? This guy is so generous, it's hard to even imagine it. He's generous to the point of insane. This is an extravagant generosity. That's the main characteristic of the person who's described as the master. And he goes away. So now, obviously, we're going to get the interim, what's going to happen with what they've been given. Well, we have it on very good authority. No New Testament scholar would argue with the fact that the person who received the 5 talents was a woman, because she was capable of handling better than certainly any man would be. So she takes these 5 talents, and being as wise as she is, and the master, here's what I imagine that this first slave, her household task was nanny to the children. Her responsibility was to raise the children with love. And the master has seen, my goodness, is a loving woman. And I bet I could just entrust her with more love than she can deal with, and she'll know exactly what to do with the love that I'm going to give her. So here it goes. And so she takes her 5 talents and goes out, and in the course of her life, doubles it. And there are laws that govern economy. Matter of fact, I've learned more about investing in the past week than I should, but all of you are probably familiar with the law of 72 that investors will tell you about if you'd like to double your money, the law of 72. But there are spiritual laws, and they're not quite as strictly observed. They're a little bit, whatever. The Hindus have a word for these spiritual laws, and they refer to karma. It's kind of a cause and effect, but it's much different than, you don't want to steal that, because if you steal that, then somebody's going to steal from you. It's much more subtle and much more profound than that on a transcendent spiritual level. But there are spiritual laws, and this is one of them, that if you have been entrusted with a spiritual blessing, if you in turn give it away, it doubles. It increases exponentially. That's the way that it works. In common parlance, pay it forward. So the 5-talent person, master comes back. What'd you do with the 5? Well, I doubled it. And the master goes, well done, good and faithful servant. You have done well with much. I will entrust you with much, and enter now into the joy of your master. Let's just back up a sec now. It's always been interesting to me that one of the things that Jesus said in the context of the Last Supper, and he's telling the disciples, now, I'm going away. They're going to kill me. They're going away, and you're going to grieve. And this is really going to hurt. It's really going to hurt. And I'm going to compare it. The only thing I can really compare it to that you might understand is childbirth. And it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. It's going to hurt like hell. But Once you see that little fetus pop out into the planet, your heart's going to be filled with so much joy that you're not even going to remember the pain. And he said, so he's going on and he's teaching about grieving. He's teaching about his going away. He's being reassuring and comforting and so forth. And he says to them, I'm saying these things to you now so that my joy will be in you and that your joy will be complete. And that phrase alone causes me to ponder. What does a guy who's about to get crucified, what business does that guy have talking about joy? And I think it's worth pondering joy in your life. When have you experienced joy? What is joy? Why is joy? What are the things? And we're talking about joy here. We're not talking about happiness. We're not talking about something that's dependent on almost anything else. We're talking about something that's profoundly interior and really real, and not fleeting. Joy. Enter into the joy of your master. Now, this is a promise. This is an invitation that, might be worth taking the master up on, entering into the joy. So we go to the second slave, the one who received 3 talents, still an unimaginable quantity of something, these 3 talents. And he reports back just identically to the first. I took what you gave me, doubled it, here you go. And the response on the part of the master, again, identical. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the master. So really, between the first and the second, there's no difference really other than the quantity of the talents, which is so large that at that point there's, you're just, nitpicking. And then comes the third is the person you don't want to be. You don't want to be this person. And the third person takes the talent and buries it. And along comes the master. Well, I gave you a talent, $1 million, not a small sum. What do you got to show for it? What have you done? And he said, well, I know you to be, you're a thief. You beat up on people and take what's not yours, and you're harsh and you're judgmental, and I was afraid. And rather than risk losing what you gave me, I buried it. Here it is, you can have it back. And the master says, wrong answer. And the master comes down on that poor guy like a ton of bricks, huh? I mean, every now and then some poor soul gets unloaded on in the scripture, but arguably this is one of the worst. You wicked, lazy. I mean, the others were being good and faithful. Here we have wicked and lazy. And in most stories, the first 2 people are the ones that get it wrong, and then the underdog comes along and he finally gets it right, and the story has a happy ending. This is just the reverse. The first 2 get it right, and the third get it miserably wrong. I'm not sure how you feel about judgment. A close friend of mine was an Old Testament scholar. Actually, he was on staff at a church that I was a part of, and he was a bona fide Old Testament scholar. And he said, I'm so tired of people telling me that the New Testament is all about Jesus and love and grace, and the Old Testament is about punishment and judgment and like that. And he said, if you're looking for judgment, you don't have to look much further than the pages of the New Testament. It's all there. And, nobody likes being judged. Nobody likes being evaluated. I mean, I'm reflecting back on, even my life, and I can remember some of the most anxious moments in my life were being tested. I remember when I was a junior in high school and having to take the SAT. And you know for sure when you're a junior in high school that how you perform on that particular standardized test is going to determine your future. I mean, it could be, it could make the difference between where your next step will take you. Are you going to go get into the college that you want? And so, even the mood around high school with the SAT was anxious. And that's nothing compared to exam week. You ever been on a college campus during exam week? I mean, the anxiety, you could cut it with a knife. It's so thick. People are not sleeping. They're concerned about their grades. They want to perform well. They haven't done their homework. They're going into exams unprepared for, and they're going to get evaluated. And the whole thing is just on edge. I mean, I remember coming out here to California, and one of the things I had to do, I had to take the driver's test again to get my California license. And I was terrified. I've been driving for, 40 years, and here they want me to, take a driver's test? It's terrible. The worst, however, is in seminary. In 1971, the National Church decided that there had to be a general ordination exam for anybody going to a seminary that was going to be ordained as an Episcopal priest. Now, here's what happened. There's a board of examining chaplains, and they come up with 7 subjects: Old Testament, church history, ethics, pastoral care, liturgy, and so forth. 7 subjects. And these people come up with questions. And every year at seminary, in February, the worst part of the year, these ordination exams are taken. And they're a week long, and you go to the school, and you get your test, you take it home. You can use any book you want, and you got to answer them. And then they're graded by this examining board of chaplains, and they come back. Well, your whole seminary experience is just, there's this big dark cloud called the G-O-E. Now, if you're an academic, if you like this kind of thing or do well at it, you're not as concerned. But if you're like me, and this is not your thing, and you know that your future depends on it, well, to say that it's no fun is to say the very least. Now, I don't know how you feel about, what's going to happen when you die and what kind of film will roll about your life and the things that you've done, and are you going to measure up, and, if you've been good, if you've been good enough, will you get into heaven? I was intrigued once by the story of an electrician. This is a near-death experience. Electrician, and he worked in New York City. He worked in for the subway department. And, of course, they work with enormous electrical currents. And this guy was working on a circuit board of some point, and, he got electrocuted. I mean, he got fried and dead, went to the emergency room, so forth, and came back to life. And they're interviewing him. And, I'm watching this video of this guy who was an electrician, bright guy, New York City, kind of Brooklyn accent, cute guy. And he said, I've been so worried about the judgment, the last judgment. But he said, when I died, I saw this, it was like a movie almost. And it was every moment of kindness that I had unconsciously done nice things for other people in my life. Almost all of which I never even remembered. But they were just, moments of, some were significant, some not. But I said, I'm not such a bad guy after all. And that's what I came away with before the decision was made that I had to come back into my body. So he said, if you're worried about the last judgment, that wasn't really my experience. So why would Matthew tell this story, and what effect does it have? Well, I've said this before, and it bears repeating, and I'll say it again, and I want you to remember it, but I don't want you to remember it in your heart. I want you to really feel how true this probably is. Because a lot of people feel that Jesus came to change the mind of God about people. People are flawed. People are broken. People make mistakes, sometimes big, sometimes not so big, but you know, even in the worst of people, there's some good, but even in the best of people, there's a significant amount of darkness. That's just true. And you know, you can read the quote by Robert Louis Stevenson that's so famous. But Jesus did not come to change the mind of God about people. Jesus came to change the mind of people about God. Because if you're thinking you're going to get what you deserve at the end, you're probably not. What you're probably going to get in the end is love, which you've been given in the beginning in an unimaginable measure to begin with. And the whole purpose of the story is to say, listen, you have more than you need. You have so much you're not even going to believe it. But the way to experience it truly is to give it away. And all of you know that. When you extend yourself to another, when you give of yourself to another, even if it's as simple as listening. You know, even if it's as simple as making the choice, okay, right now this person is going through something, and rather than thinking about something clever to say, or how this happened to me, or how I can help, I'm going to put all that aside, and I'm just going to listen. And how in the long run, that moment of self-sacrifice will pay off in your life and in the life of the person who you decided to listen. This is a spiritual law. When you offer yourself, sacrifice of yourself for the other, it comes back to you twice. Twice. Unfortunately, the same is also true if you don't. Because if you keep the love that you've been given in your heart, in your life to share, and you don't share it as generously as you can from cradle to grave, this will be a choice that you will regret. Because a ton of bricks will land directly on your head. And that is just the way that it works. Amen.
Contributions to St. Luke's Episcopal Church from patrons like you help to make the digital ministry and other outreach within the community possible. If it is in your heart to make a donation, St. Luke's secure PayPal link, as well as the church's mailing information, may be found in the description of this video. Thank you.